I'm going to be speaking with Colonel Phaedra McLean, Deputy Commandant Reserves at the Royal Military Academy at Sandhurst. And it's a real privilege to be at Sandhurst today in Le Marchant Room, where we'll be speaking about the Colonel's career in the Intelligence Corps and sharing some of those secrets for the National Centre for Military Intelligence. Ma'am, thank you for joining me today.
Absolute pleasure.
And the gentleman behind you, General Le Marchant, tell me a bit about him.
He's the fore-founder of what we have here today at the Royal Military Academy at Sandhurst, or MAS as most people know it. So born in 1766, in the days where you bought a commission with money, he could only afford a commission in the militia. But he recognised that our soldiers were poorly trained, poorly led, poorly equipped, and decided to do something about it. And that's where we established training for our juniors and our officer cadets in a way that started here. We moved into Sandhurst in, I think it was 1811. So that is it. So he is our founding father of this, as you said, a wonderful establishment.
I get such a sense of the impressiveness of this place. It's awesome, and at the beginning, as I said, so very historic. So in terms of your own career, what led you to go into the Intelligence Corps?
Well, it's quite a convoluted and long story that takes you all the way back to my school days. So I, at a really young age, wanted to join the police force. So that's what I did throughout. So I joined straight from school. On my first police station where I worked, I found out about the Territorial Army. And in those days, we were severely restricted by our police force as to who you could join. So I joined the Royal Military Police. And from there, in the sort of 1990s, I think it was, options for change brought about, large change for the regular and the Territorial Army as it was then. But those restrictions and the reduction of that meant that I had a choice to choose a new cap badge. I didn't think the Intelligence Corps would be for me. I'm somebody with a few, as was O-levels and CSEs. I've got one A-level, so not something that you would expect, or I expected that would be accepted into the Intelligence Corps, but I was advised that they were looking for all things and for different things, so to have a go, and that's what I did. So that's what led me into the Intelligence Corps, and something that I'd wished I'd actually done sooner, because it's given me so many opportunities and experiences as well.
So in terms of the evolution of the reserve, the military intelligence battalions, can you tell me something about that?
So when I first joined, I joined the Intenside Group V, so Intelligence and Security Volunteers, and that was the forerunner of what became 3MI Battalion, so 3 Military Intelligence Battalion, headquarters in London and, companies around the rest of the UK. 2008, that split into 2, and that established both 3MI and 5MI, with its headquarters in Colby Newham. And then we had Army 2020 and Future Reserves 20, which brought about a huge amount of change for the Corps. There was a tremendous amount of work done by, a really dedicated and committed team at 1MI Brigade headquarters. Reservists absolutely embedded in that team, advising. We did what the Intelligence Corps do best and did our intelligence preparation of the recruiting environment, which gives us the footprint that we have today. And the reserve cohort, and I think based on what we had delivered during operations both in Iraq and Afghanistan, absolutely it doubled in size. So that was really significant from a reserves, and we were rebranded into the Army Reserves as well. So
in terms of other things that they deliver, are you able to expand a little bit on? Because most people have probably not heard of the Intelligence Corps, let alone the reserves.
Well, the Intelligence Corps Reserves, as we call them, abbreviated to MI Reserves, deliver pretty much everything that the regular cohort do as well. So our reserve battalions, which are 3, 5, 6 and 7, and our special group military intelligence, which are, as you can see, they're specialists providing, bringing a lot of the outside in, are paired with our regular battalions of 1, 2 and 4, and also with our defence organisations as well. So in that means that we deliver the same. So, you know, the human intelligence, the material personal exploitation, our imagery analysts, all of those you can do within the reserve as well. It may be based on which battalion you are joining, which is on geography, but that isn't completely restrictive. We have the ability to move about like the regulars do as well. So anything that you can think of, then we can do it as well.
So in terms of your own career, is there a project or a moment or a particular role that you've undertaken which for you is quite special? I
think it was, a lot of it is special. As I said at the beginning, I've had so many opportunities and experience that you would never get anywhere else. But I think the key one has to be the opportunity to command a battalion. And I got that chance with 6 of my battalion in Manchester. It came fortuitously at the point where I was retiring from the police force after my 30 years career. I did wonder why everybody kept asking me when are you retiring? When is it you're retiring again? But obviously I was graded suitable and got that opportunity. And I think the reason it was so special was, one, it was an opportunity that we never ever imagined back when we were in Tyneside Group V, that the reserve would actually be a commanding officer of one of those battalions. And also it was a battalion that at its very, very heart, that nucleus of what it was going to grow from, was the company and the detachments where I first transferred. So I transferred into a section in Preston, and we moved that into Chorley, and Chorley detachment became the nucleus of our company in Manchester. And I was the officer commanding of 29 Company in Birmingham, that then moved to Stourbridge. And again, that is a company that still belongs to 6 of my battalion. So that, to have that at the heart of it, a huge amount of responsibility and pressure to get it right for them, but to be able to grow that battalion and to see how it flourished and developed, delivering absolutely the operational capability that was expected of us while still growing, is something that I really, really look back on throughout my time as being a key highlight.
And having made such a mark on the Intelligence Corps, of course, which didn't accept women formally until 1992, isn't that correct?
It is correct, yes. Yeah. Going back to how I got to the Intelligence Corps, when I wanted to join the police, and I was told you came through the WRAC, so the Women's Royal Army Corps. Instead, you were attached. So that's what I was within the Royal Military Police. I was actually WRAC attached until that time when we were able to wear the cap badge of the corps that we were serving.
When you look back on your career, do you have any regrets?
I think looking back, there is just one that sticks in my mind. And I actually talked about it at the weekend with some colleagues, was the opportunity to mobilise was one that, we didn't see as being available to us. As a police officer, I couldn't volunteer to go away anywhere. And the first mobilisations in 2002, compulsory formal mobilisations, were for Op Veritas, to take intelligence analysts into Defence Intelligence Staff, now DI, in the old War Office building. So I kicked and screamed and waved and shouted to get mobilised on that, not thinking that I would get the opportunity again. I was fortunate. I got to work on the Gulf desk, covering Iraq, on that build-up to Operation Telic. But of course, at the 6-month point when I was due to go home, back to my job, my company at 29 in both in Preston, Chorley and in Stourbridge were deploying. They were mobilising on Operation Telic, and I wasn't able to go with them. And that was really, really disappointing to not be able to share that experience with them. But I also think it shows that capability of the Army Reserves. Members of that company at 29 Company were part of a field security section on that first deployment, and they provided 7 of the 13 members of a field security unit which is pretty impressive. And does show capability and that willingness to be there when it matters.
That's amazing, isn't it? And to get that understanding from you today. So is there a point at which in some ways the reserve services have hindered, or have they helped?
I think for myself, absolutely helped. My two jobs, by their nature, I think, have certain synergies. I wasn't in intelligence in the police force. I was a firearms officer. And how did I get to be a firearms officer? I wanted to be a mounted police officer. Having joined a force with no horses, I had to rethink that, and that's where it came in. So found out about Territorial Army, went on my basic training, discovered I could hit the target more than I missed it when I was on the range. I could hold my own tactically against my predominantly male peers. So I thought, and I came back and I thought, do you know what? Well, maybe I could do that within the police. And of course, in those days, no, you can't. So, but that gave me, in time, the confidence to keep pushing the police to allow me to try. So I became a firearms officer throughout my career. In joining the Territorial Army, in mobilising, again, that gave a confidence. It gave me leadership skills that I didn't have in the police force. It gave me an operational and a strategic view, which as a police constable not always privy to the bigger picture. And that again took me into a different line of work and operational planning within the police force as well. So it really has given me benefits from both sides. Whether either of them recognise it, I don't know, but certainly it did.
So what I'm getting from the comments that you're saying today is that, I mean, you've been at the forefront, haven't you, of pushing for women's roles. I mean, it's incredible. You've been quite a motivator and initiator in transforming how women can serve.
I think looking back, I can see that. At the time, you just sort of get on. But yes, I was, the first firearms officer in our force. I was one of the first instructors in the country. I was the first hostage rescue female instructor. I was the first female reserve commanding officer within the MI battalions, and the first female Corps Colonel Reserves of the Intelligence Corps, which was the next job after 6 MI battalion. And as I say, you don't see it in yourself at a young age. That's what I want to do, so I'm going to do it, or at least try. So it's only now I look back and realise that yes, it has been something of a journey, as they use in the parlance of today, but something that I'm really proud of, and hope that yes, I've been somebody that people can follow rather than be the only one. That's what I'd hope to have, that those doors are already, they, if not banging against the wall, they are certainly ajar, and people are, more than welcome to walk through and follow me.
In terms of your career as a police officer and balancing that with the Territorial Army and with the reserves, was that particularly difficult and challenging?
There's been occasions, but in general, at the start of my career, both in the reserves and in the police, it was relatively simple. I was on a reduced commitment. I was a police officer, and joining the military police, I already had all the skills required. I just needed to have the military piece put in there. So that was a little easier during shifts. We didn't do training nights or weekends. It was moving to the Intelligence Corps, greater commitments. You had training nights and weekends, and when you've only got one weekend off in 5, that weekend being a training weekend can sometimes put pressures on you. But I think the Army Reserves now has become much, much better at recognising that level of commitment and requirement between that. The work-life balance for the reserve is work, but it's family, work and the reserves. So it's a 3-way split. And we recognise that there are cycles in people's lives that mean they can't be here all the time. And what we want to do is manage those individuals to get the best out of them, to give them the opportunities as and when they are available without putting that additional pressure on them. So it is doable. So if people are worried about it being too much, look at it. I tell employers, look at it as though somebody is in a football club or a squash club. Most of it will be done in our own time. It won't impact on them. It's just when we need to, we'll go away for a bit longer.
Yeah, so what about the challenges. Can you elaborate? You've mentioned some already about, particularly as a woman in this area. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, well, I think it is just being that first female and being that opportunity to get a foot across the threshold to show that you can achieve the same as your male peers. Going back many years, there were not women on firearms, full stop. You will not be able to manage the weapons, full stop. Tactically you didn't play cops and robbers as a child. Well, I did. That's what I wanted to do as a job. So it was just persuading people to give you the opportunity to see whether you could or you couldn't. And the same in the army. I think those perceptions of what females can and can't do was fairly embedded. What I would say is that in both of those organisations have undergone a huge amount of change. I mean, we're talking, 25 and 30 years ago now, that huge amount of change, and that realisation that it isn't all about the strength that you have or the speed that you can run, that there are an awful lot of other ways that you can deliver exactly the same results as anybody else. So those are really the challenge, and it is just having confidence in yourself to have a go. You may not be successful, but at least you've tried and proven to yourself whether you can or you can't.
It's bringing those skills to whatever service, whether it's military intelligence or in your case initially with the police. You did actually mobilise, though, didn't you, eventually? You mentioned earlier about you couldn't mobilise in the Iraq War, but you did mobilise later, if I understand correctly. Yeah.
Well, I didn't mobilise in Operation Telek because I had mobilised under Operation Veritas, but that was a shortened mobilisation. We worked in London, we weren't deploying overseas. So that was a really good experience. I was on the Gulf desk. I extended for an extra 5 months so that I covered the war fighting phase. So I felt as though I was supporting my soldiers, even if it was from afar. But what it did mean, it wasn't an operational deployment. Operation Herrick came up. So again, when asked if I would deploy on that, absolutely jumped at the chance to do it. We didn't go to Kandahar. I went into the Operational Intelligence Support Group in Kabul. Again, that opportunity to be briefing Commander ISAF forces in the headquarters, was very similar to briefing at cabinet level and across Whitehall when I was in London. And those opportunities don't come every day, but what a confidence it gives you when you come back home again. And my police force, Cheshire Police, were hugely supportive of that activity. They allowed me to be away for 2 years out of 4. Wow, which is quite significant because they were 3 years apart. Yeah. So that was a huge amount of support and confidence on their part for me to come back and use that experience, which helped in that.
And are you able to tell us anything, because some in the audience might not appreciate the kind of work with the briefings, the kind of material in broad terms you might be briefing commanders on?
I mean, in both environments, it was predominantly that our national intelligence specific. So what are the input? I mean, we, in simple terms, what are we as intelligence corps officers and soldiers trying to do? We are analysing all of that huge amount of information and giving the commanders at the point of decision the right detail that they need to be able to get it right. And we say, in simple terms, the so what and the what ifs. Yeah. And that's what we were doing. We were delivering to Commander ISAF that national specific, whilst liaising, with the other nations that were within that environment. It was a joint and NATO forces. But across, the whole of that operational theatre, reservists of all sorts of cap badges were providing their skill set, their trade, away from home and family, away from their normal employment, and delivering that operational capability. We were in all that theatre.
So for anyone who's looking to join the Army Reserves, or in fact the Intelligence Corps Reserves, what would the environment look like to them? I mean, what's the inspirational message that you would have that would inspire them to join?
Well, I think it's it's worth it because it's a diverse organisation. It's full of people who are committed and motivated, who are driven to support their regular counterparts in the army and wider defence. They're looking for that answer, and it's a great group of people. And that diversity for us is absolutely key. We are certainly within the female cohort, over 20% of the MI reserves is female and driving forward and higher every time. And that's what we're looking for, a difference of thought, but different backgrounds, different families, different education, different cultures, different experiences in life, and bringing all of that to bear when making that analysis of the intelligence to deliver to the commander the intelligence that they need at the point of the decision.
That's interesting because people may not actually realise just how broad and diverse it is. So finally, can I ask you, so for anyone interested in joining the Intelligence Corps and the Reserves in particular, how would you see the direction going forwards that would excite them and inspire them?
Excite and inspire. I just think is don't let anybody say that you can't. Come and have a go. If you're even mildly interested, get in touch. There are so many roles to have a go at that if it's not right for you, the first one, there'll be something else for you to do. And the reserves, any military service is a wonderful experience. It's hugely rewarding. You meet such a broad range of people and individuals. This course at Sandhurst that I oversee, our commissioning course short, is the most diverse, I think, in the Army. From 18 to 56, from padres to cyber specialists. You name it, we have it. And that's what we're looking for within the Corps, to have that broad spectrum and a group of people who are all motivated to get to the same endpoint and deliver the same output.
Colonel McLean, thank you so much for sharing this with me today. Military intelligence, your particular career with the Intelligence Corps Reserve for the National Centre for Military Intelligence. Thank you so much.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
This has been a production for the National Centre for Military Intelligence. To find out more and to support the NCMI, please visit ncmi.co.uk.